everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Zach Nunn, a member of the For Country Caucus. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Brittany, thank you very much for having me on. And as both a combat veteran and somebody who just returned from the Middle East, it's so good to be able to talk with you about something that is truly redefining the entire Central Command's structure between both our countries, our allies, and hopefully a more peaceful future going forward.
And that's why I think you can provide a really unique perspective here. I would love to start the conversation. We have a wide-ranging one, but let's start about what's happening exactly in the Middle East and the United States' involvement. We'll start this weekend. The United States dropped bunker buster bombs on multiple nuclear sites in Iran. President Trump called the strikes successful, and he said, quote, "Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror." First, to start off the conversation, what do you make of the action?
Well, first of all, Operation Midnight Hammer was a master's class that President Trump could be teaching at the War College on how both operational security, integrity, as well as how we were able to so successfully go after a real hardened target deep inside Iran. Now, here's the reality. The Israeli Air Force had done a phenomenal job in eliminating Iran's ability to control the skies. But it was only the United States that could provide the B-2 bomber, only the United States that could provide the GBU-57, which is a deep penetrator weapon, and only the United States that had the capacity to be able to fly all the way around the world under the cover of darkness and eliminate Iran's ability to possess a nuclear weapons program. This is a great step forward. It's also an effective attempt to regain peace in the Middle East, something that our Arab allies, both in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states, want, and something that President Trump held the door open for all the way through a conversation with colleagues in Turkey to be able to say, we want to bring the Iranians to the table and de-escalate. But it was the Ayatollah and the IRGC who chose to bat away the hand of the president and force the United States into a situation where we were going to ensure there was no nuclear threat, not just to the Middle East, but to the entire world. And this was an operation executed flawlessly. And as you just saw this week, President Trump took a 12-day war and within 48 hours had Iran back to the peace table for negotiation on how to de-escalate the situation across the region.
Congressman, it's really interesting because the reaction wasn't really split amongst party lines. There have been Republicans and Democrats who have been, like yourself, congratulating the president, thinking the strike is a good thing. Other Republicans and Democrats have been largely critical of the strike, have called it unconstitutional. But for decades, as we know, presidents from both parties have bombed other countries and have ordered military action on countries without the consent of Congress. Do you think that power, that presidential power, needs to be reined in at all? What do you make of that argument that what the president did was unconstitutional?
Look, here's what I know. This was the definition of a surgical strike that had incredible impact to U.S. national security, something clearly within Article 2 of the president's ability to execute. I also know this as a combat veteran who's flown multiple combat sorties in this region, including those off the coast of Iran. The threat from Iran was real. No one builds a centrifuge facility 30 stories below ground, enriches uranium above 85%, and then continues to feint that they don't have the intention of creating a nuclear weapons cache, particularly when they have multiple proxies, 3, Hezbollah in Gaza and Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza and the West Bank, and the Houthis out of Yemen who have attacked U.S. forces around the region. And Brittany, let's not forget, we have 40,000 U.S. troops stationed in the Central Command AOR, including several thousand Iowa National Guardsmen who I just sent off on their final tour before they go and take up responsibilities in the Middle East. There's a direct threat to U.S. interests. There's a direct threat to U.S. personnel. And this is something the president has absolute authority to be able to execute on. And as soon as that strike was over, he came back to the negotiating table. I would really have to say this is not even close to being a red line for the War Powers Act. This is fully in the scope and something that you're absolutely right. As a combat veteran, I support the president's swift, decisive action in this space.
And as a combat veteran, I think, A, thank you for your service, but B, you were deployed to the Middle East a couple of times. And before the ceasefire agreement, which we will get to, was reached, it's shaky at best as of right now, but before that was reached, there was concern about, is this an endless war? Is this going to be a World War III? I mean, what do you make of that criticism as someone who's been deployed to the Middle East?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I believe strongly in peace through strength, deterrence being one of the most effective ways to ensure security in the region. What we did not have from my tours in Afghanistan was a clear outline of what our final objective was going to be. And after we had taken Osama bin Laden, we did not have a deterrent plan going forward. Look, 20 years in Iraq, we still have troops on the ground here. There's a real concern that these become long-term policing operations rather than strategic achievements for the United States to both secure our personnel and to help these countries move forward. I want to be very clear here with Iran. The future of Iran is up to the Iranian people. The terror that the Ayatollah and the IRGC have inflicted across the region, including hundreds of American soldiers, airmen, Marines, sailors who have lost their lives, that needs to be held accountable. And what we could not have happen was for the regime in Iran to get possession of a nuclear weapon that could have threatened not only the Middle East, but could have allowed folks right here in the United States to be victims of the type of Iranian activities that have penetrated, particularly through our southern border, real threats to the United States. Let's not forget, Brittany, just last summer, President Trump was targeted by the IRGC for assassination. Luckily, that was foiled, but with a nuclear weapon, we have upped the ante so high that it was important we end their capability before it even got started.
Something that a lot of the world agrees on is that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That's something that past presidents have said as well. And President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance said that Iran's nuclear program has been obliterated. That's the word that they're using. It's completely destroyed. An Israeli official reportedly said that the impact of the strike isn't totally clear, but the nuclear sites weren't completely destroyed. Reports also indicate that the term they're using is this is more of a setback. Either way, an analyst just told me, I was having a conversation with them earlier this morning, that even if you bomb away the entire nuclear facility, you can't bomb away knowledge. And the knowledge that Iran has right now of the nuclear program is not foreign. It's specifically with Iran. What do you make of that characterization?
Well, I want to highlight again that I went on a bipartisan trip to the Middle East as bombs are literally falling on Israel and our allies throughout the region. And what we heard to a T from leaders in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, UAE, Gulf states, as well as in conversations with the Israelis, is that everyone collectively knows Iran is a threat if it's allowed to have a nuclear weapon that can actually reach anywhere in the region. And you're absolutely right. Knowledge has the ability to carry this forward. But candidly, the Israelis have been pretty effective in decapitating a lot of that knowledge inside Iran, both the scientists and those who would look to weaponize nuclear power to threaten the rest of the world. But our Arab allies also felt threatened by this, and they realized that while Iran is a country whom they hope to do business with, we can frame this in the sense of Iran has a future to come into the fold of international norms. One of the things that we highlighted on our trip was the Abrams Accord. It offered a real on-ramp under President Trump's first term to start normalizing relations with Israel and our Arab and Gulf partners. Iran could be a party to this as well. It means being able to have diplomatic relations again. It means economic security for the entire Gulf region, something that is very important for the Iranians. It also means being able to have a security apparatus where money is going to funding the future of the Iranian people, not going to fund terrorist elements that actually takes away from the Iranian people. So moving forward in these aspects, we know that Iran has a choice to make. They can move forward as part of a great collaboration of nations in the Middle East that want a better future, and we see that relevant today in Qatar, Bahrain, and UAE with their huge economic success. But we've also seen the opposite of this. Iran can continue to fund the type of destabilization tyranny that has taken over places like Syria, that has hobbled Lebanon, that has harmed Yemen, and most importantly, that is a threat to the Iranian people. This together, I think, paints a very clear picture of two futures that Iran can choose. The Ayatollah, the IRGC need to recognize what path they want to be on, because going and threatening your neighbors, whether it's Israel, the Arab states, or the United States, is going to result in a obliteration of any type of program that's going to be a threat to Americans back home.
Iran really seems to be at a crossroads right at this moment. And right now, a big question that's looming large is the over 800 pounds of missing, highly enriched uranium. Does that concern you? I mean, because right now, what does that mean? Where is it? Do we know any intelligence regarding that?
Yeah, I think as a career intelligence officer, this is one of the things I'm very focused on. The B-2 is only one tool in our toolkit. The Israelis, as well as U.S. Special Forces, have the ability to action operations on the ground. But I'm also leading a compendium of bills called the Iranian Maximum Pressure Campaign. These are a list of sanctions. This is our economic diplomatic toolkit to be able to really leverage transparency out of Tehran. They need to be able to identify where this has gone, and they need to showcase in a very clear fashion to the rest of the world for our security and theirs that they're handling this responsible. Otherwise, we have a series of sanctions that ratchet up and afford the president the ability to really go after the Iranian regime to make clear what their purpose is. And again, if they don't, the United States has a very strong kinetic tool in their toolkit to go after this as well.
President Trump on Monday night announced a ceasefire between Iran and Israel. Right now, that seems to be shaky at best. What do you make of that agreement as we sit here right now?
Look, I think the president is absolutely right. This is 46 years in the making. We have two vicious adversaries who have been going at each other. The very fact that he was able to take a 12-day war and bring it to a conclusion within 48 hours is a huge testament to American power and leadership by the president. He opened up the door to diplomacy almost instantly after the strike on Fordow. I think we need to be able to recognize the fact that this isn't going to end immediately and turn on a dime, but we are already at a piece where we de-escalated far more than where we've seen for the last 2 weeks. Moving forward on this trajectory means that we have a real pathway at this moment in time for the Iranians to do the right thing, for the Israelis to be able to have their security and step back and actually see the Middle East potentially at an inflection point here, transitioning to something that's much better for the people of the Middle East and for the United States to really allow our Arab partners to start taking point on here, because the U.S. has responsibilities both here at home and as we look towards China being a real threat to the region.
I know that Trump wants a ceasefire, you want a ceasefire, America broadly wants peace in the region. This morning, though, President Trump did accuse both sides of violating the ceasefire agreement. President Trump said that as soon as the agreement was reached, Israel, quote, came out and dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I've never seen before. He also added this, quote, we basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the expletive they're doing. We want a ceasefire. What do you think the other two sides want, and what's the diplomatic solution here? Does everyone here in this triangle want a ceasefire and want peace?
Everyone that we spoke to truly does want to see peace. They want to see a de-escalation of the violence, and they want to have an off-ramp that I think the United States, to our credit, has been affording to all countries involved. Does it mean it's going to happen immediately? No. But it also means the United States has not walked away from our leadership role here. When the president goes from B-2 bombs to dropping F-bombs, you can clearly see that he's committed to making sure these two are held accountable. And he's not going to just walk away from something that we've been invested in. It's too dangerous to allow Iran to reconstitute. Candidly, it's also too dangerous to allow this type of fighting to go on. Nearly a quarter of the world's oil is going right through the Persian Gulf, and we want to make sure that our interests, and our troops for that matter, are kept very safe. That said, the solution here is not going to be something driven by Washington, D.C., and it's not going to be tolerated by the American people to enter into another forever war. This is a window that Israel and Iran have to come to the table and make peace. The Arab states need to be involved in this, and they need to be back-channeling the importance of this. Again, we have a pathway for success here as measured in the Abrams Accord, and we have a toolkit both through my maximum Iranian sanctions package and ultimately through kinetic power if we don't. But ultimately, this is a decision the people of the Middle East need to step up to decide if they want peace going forward.
I do not want to switch gears for just a moment. Earlier this month, 2 Chinese nationals were arrested after they allegedly tried to smuggle a dangerous fungus into the United States. You introduced a bipartisan bill meant to combat aggro terrorism. So to first start off the conversation, this is a term that's new to me. What is aggro terrorism, and what exactly will your bill do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are leading a bill specifically to stop the type of aggro terrorism that China is inflicting on the United States. The reality is we have seen multiple Chinese individuals come to the United States bringing things like very malicious fungus, worms that can infect both crop, livestock, and even do harm to humans. The reality here is this type of aggro terrorism, meaning bring something in with the intent to cause malicious intent to the U.S. food supply, our agricultural components, and be a direct threat to the U.S. ability to help both feed and fuel not only Americans, but the entire world, is under pressure because of a very poor form of research, claimed research, being done by these Chinese nationals. Now, Brittany, I want to lay out a little bit of a perspective here. In my home state of Iowa, nearly 10 years ago, we saw Chinese nationals come to my state and literally take corn seeds out of a test field so they could take it back to China for replication and modification. Luckily, at the time, we were able to stop them with the FBI on the tarmac in Des Moines, Iowa, to prevent that from happening. But now they've launched 3 of the largest cyber attacks in the United States that we've seen just in the last year. And in addition to that, they have researchers coming to America, bringing high pathogen fungus and highly infective worms that could devastate to the tune of tens of billions of dollars America's agricultural capability. That, by definition, is aggro terrorism, the type of small things that can have an asymmetric disadvantage to the United States while affording a country like China a huge economic advantage over us at a time and place of their choosing.
So your bill is the Preventing Lethal Agricultural and National Threats Act, the PLANT Act. It has the support of a Democrat, Congressman Riley from New York. What's next for this legislation?
So I think this is really important legislation. It is bipartisan. It is very focused both on what we can do to leverage the Department of Justice, USDA, and Customs and Border Patrol to establish a chain of custody early in this process. And ultimately, it sets the threshold of anyone who knowingly and maliciously brings this into the country. Right now, we have a very high bar out there for anyone coming in to treat them as though they had a designed intent to destroy American crop. And candidly, not only is that too high of a bar, it doesn't go after these individuals because they can escape back to China before we're able to detain and prosecute them. What our bill would also do, it was elevate the criminal punishment for up to 10 years. It would hold them accountable here in the United States, and with additional charges, they could spend up to 2 decades in prison. I want to be able to send a very clear message to China, particularly for these individuals who signed a blood oath to the CCP that they would do their bidding here on U.S. soil, that this is not acceptable. If you want to come here to study, if you want to be part of the future of making both America and the world great, then you have to do so responsibly. But by hiding fungus in your shoe to do clandestine research, by mailing worms to the United States or hiding them in your luggage, that not only is careless, reckless, and dangerous, it looks like an intentional effort by the Chinese to infiltrate the United States with dangerous pathogens that could end up destroying an entire generation of crop.
Congressman Zach Nunn, I really appreciate your perspective today. I appreciate your time. You are welcome back for a conversation anytime. Thank you so much for joining me.
Brittany, you're great. Thanks to everybody at Forbes. I appreciate what you guys do.